Genesis 34 and 35. And Genesis 34, its chapter is the defiling of Dinah. And Dinah was the daughter of Leah, so Jacob's daughter, to the elder. Dinah is the daughter of Jacob and Leah was the younger, or the older of the two wives, the older sister. Anyway, there is a group, Shechem, the son of Hamor the Hivite, the prince of the land. He apparently seized Dinah and had his way with her and humiliated her. Let's see. So Jacob hears about this. Even more so, Jacob's sons hear about this, that their daughter was raped. And they are livid. But they try to play cool, and Shechem gets his father involved and says that he really loves the girl, actually. And they ask Jacob if that son, Shechem, Hamor's son, can marry Dinah. And then they say, oh, maybe this awful thing could turn out to be something great, and all of the Hivites in their group can commingle with everyone in Jacob's group, and they tried to sort of spin it sounds like, as our two groups of kinsmen can unite. That's what they wanted to do. They wanted to intermesh the women of Jacob's group with the women of Hamor's group. So anyway, Jacob's sons, I think, were key behind this, sort of negotiate on Jacob's behalf, and they're like, this sounds good, but none of the men in your tribe, we'll call it, are circumcised. So they say, if you all get circumcised, we'll agree. That's what they said. So Shechem and Hamor are like, okay, that works. We'll do that. That's a good deal. That's fine. We can do that. And they think it's a great thing. So they go back to their, I don't know what these terms are for where they're living, their camp, and all the men in the camp get circumcised, because they go over this and they say this is what's going to happen. So they're like, all right, well, get circumcised, which I'm sure wasn't exactly a fun event for them, given that they're grown men and they're not like babies. So they all get circumcised, and on day 3, they're basically recovering. It probably takes at minimum a week, possibly more, maybe 2 weeks. I'd say a week. And not only are they recovering, but they're off guard, because they're almost in like a celebratory mood. So they're like recovering, but also they're like, oh, that wasn't great, but it's going to be worth it. Well, no, it wasn't great. And they got attacked. So 2 of Jacob's sons raid the land with swords, and they kill all the men. So, yeah, they were healing from the circumcision, but they were also even more so off guard. That's the combination of the two was a 1-2 punch. Like, had they known and they were circumcised, like it would have been terrible to fight recovering through that, but it would have been possible. They would have at least had their guard up. So they were just totally off guard, and they got slaughtered. And the Jacob's sons pillage the land, take everything, all the sheep, the oxen, the herds, and they come back to Jacob, and Jacob is like, he was like in disbelief. I mean, maybe there was a little bit of him that was proud of his sons, but he didn't really say. He's like, this is a huge issue now. It was a big issue before, it was a huge issue now. And the sons are like, well, what could we do? We couldn't let that happen. So, um, yeah, Jacob says, "My numbers are few. If they gather themselves against me and attack me, I shall be destroyed." So he's like, I get why you guys did this, and he didn't really care that they all got slaughtered so much as that he's like, you kind of stung the bee, and now it, we could be in jeopardy by all the towns around us attacking us. So, yeah, I think Jacob was kind of like, he was kind of like, I get proud of his sons for standing up for the family, but um, I guess in his older and wiser years, he looked at the long-term outcome of the repercussions that his sons didn't see. And his son said, but they said, should he treat our sisters like a prostitute? So Jacob is kind of like, it's up to him. He's gonna take care of all this. So I think he goes to Bethel, and somewhere God speaks with him again. I believe he's journeying. I think something happened where God struck. Word of this probably got around quickly, and I got the feeling that Jacob's clan was very vulnerable and surrounded by much more established clansmen. And it says somewhere in there, it was almost like simultaneously all the villages around them were struck down with some sort of just issues. So God came out and protected them before Jacob really even had to do anything. Yeah. As they journeyed, a terror from God fell upon the cities that were around them, and so they did not pursue the sons of Jacob. So they go on to Bethel, and Rebecca unfortunately dies. And it's kind of sad because that was Jacob's definitely his one and true love right there. So Rebecca gets buried. She gets buried, I think in Bethel. Actually, she had one more kid, and she died during birth. So he's up in like the 20s of the children. It goes through them all. I forget where she was buried, but apparently that site is still around today. And then Jacob finally meets Isaac again, and Isaac doesn't make it much longer. He pretty much dies, and Esau and Jacob bury him. Matthew 13. These are, it goes through several parables. Parable of the sower, parable, and then he explains the parable of the sower. It is a relatively, you'd think if somebody told you this and they're like, I'm telling you something important, this is a parable, and then they tell you the parable of the sower, if you meditated on it for a while, I think you would get it. But they didn't understand it. I guess that makes sense. Or maybe they just wanted them to explain it. I think that they were more so like, Master, why do you speak in these parables? And they're like, even though we maybe get it, why don't we just ask you and you explain it to us? So he explains the parables, the mustard seed and the leaven, parable of the hidden treasure, parable of the pearl of great value. That one's short. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant in search of fine pearls, who on finding one pearl of great value went and sold all that he had and bought it. Parable of the net. Net goes out and brings in all the fish, and then they separate the fish, and the evil ones are separated, which are like the righteous, and that'll get the righteous being separated from the evil, and the evil will get thrown into the fiery furnace, the place of weeping and gnashing teeth. New and old treasures. Jesus rejected Nazareth. So apparently he's back in Nazareth, his hometown, and it's just not a warm reception. Not a warm reception for him. I think they're hearing of things that have been going on. Maybe some think it's true, some don't. They really just don't. They don't want to be the center. They don't want any disruption brought to their village. They don't look upon Jesus extremely kindly, and Jesus, he doesn't. I don't know what would be symbolic of this, but he doesn't do any healing works in his own town. A prophet is not without honor except in his hometown and in his own household. And he did not do many mighty works there because of their unbelief. So it's his hometown. He went back. They didn't believe him, and I think he made it pretty clear before that when he was sending his disciples out, anyone who doesn't receive you, shake off your feet.